Welcome to this Tech Geeks video. Today we're going to be talking about what do I need to run TP-Link Vigi. So maybe we should start with what is TP-Link Vigi. TP-Link Vigi is an ecosystem made up of NVRs, network video recorders, and cameras. So this is a surveillance solution. It has motion detection, it has continual recording, it can recognize vehicles, it can recognize people, you can define if objects or people have crossed over certain points on your property or where the cameras are facing. It can alert you using an app on your phone or using a web browser to those actions, or you can even connect the NVR directly to a screen, keyboard and mouse and have a screen running all of the time showing your cameras. Realistically, what you do with this is all about what you can imagine. There are wireless cameras, there are wired cameras, there will be probably battery cameras in due course as well. So as the system grows, you've got lots of different positions and options to put them. I'm not going to show you every single camera. I'm going to give you the basics of what you need, and then you can work through the choices so that you end up with a solution that works for you. So what's the first thing we need to choose? We need to talk about NVRs, network video recorders. This is one here, small little box. All right, this is a non-PoE. We'll talk about PoE in a moment, so don't worry. A network video recorder allows us to maintain and store larger amounts of data. So with TP-Link Vigi, we have two ways of storing that data. We can have an onboard, so this is a camera, which we'll have a look at in a moment. We can put an onboard micro SD card in here, and we can have storage of data on the camera. It can do all of the same features, alerting and everything else, but the storage is on the camera. This is a great cost-effective way because we don't need the extra expense of this being networked back. As long as the camera has internet connection, and then we can retrieve the data. Obviously, there are limitations. The size of the SD card that we can have in the camera. Also, what happens if the camera gets damaged or somebody smashed the camera down? The footage would go with it. So in many instances, we find just storage on the camera is efficient for many people at home. All right, but if you're wanting a more resilient solution, then you're probably going to want to look at a network video recorder. So what are the key things to look at when we're looking at a network video recorder? We want to think about the amount of storage and the number of cameras we're likely to have. These all need to have processing power and memory in them. And so there will always be a limitation to how many cameras a device can take. So this one here is actually a 16 channel, so we'll actually take up to 16 cameras. You can get them in a multitude, 32, 8, 4. So you want to think about how many cameras do I need now and how many cameras might I want in the future, and make sure you have probably something that's got twice as many cameras ability than what you have right now. There's only tens of dollars difference. It's not hundreds of dollars of difference. So it's probably worth over-speccing at the starting point. You then probably want to think about how you're going to power those cameras. So this is just a normal, what we call non-PoE. So it just has one Ethernet port. And we'll talk about how that fits together in a minute. But you can get these models that have a number of switch ports in them and can power the cameras as well, called PoE, power over Ethernet. So have a think about first, are you going to wire these cameras or are they going to be wireless? If they're wired and you don't already have a PoE switch, then you might want to think about getting an NVR that has PoE ports, which will then obviously keep it all in the same unit, and it can power those cameras as well. So those are the two sort of starting takeaways. Do I need an NVR? So am I going to just store on the camera? Still the same functions, most of the same functions, but I have limitation on the storage. But also, what if the camera gets damaged? Or am I going to store on an NVR? If I'm going to store an NVR, are my cameras going to be wireless, or do I want them to be wired, and therefore maybe I'm going to think about an NVR that has PoE ports on it? And then how many cameras am I going to want to manage? Make sure maybe you've done this for double the cameras that you are after. So we've made a choice on whether we're going to record on the camera or whether we're going to record on the NVR. Now we need to think about the amount of storage that we need. We buy these NVRs and the cameras without any storage. So what do we want to think about? Two things. most people think about recording as being 24 hours a day because we want it to record 24 hours a day, but do you need to store all of those 24 hours? So for instance, if I've got a camera looking maybe at my shed door, all right, do I want 24 hours of looking at my shed door with one time that door being opened to my shed? Probably not, because that's a lot of wasted storage. What we're most likely to do is going to be using motion detection. So we're going to set our camera up to record if there is motion. And it's going to record as soon as motion happens, it's going to record for a period after it. Now, if we're doing this on the camera, we do have a slight limitation. The camera will start recording the instant it notices motion. If we're doing this on an NVR, the camera is essentially streaming its data back all of the time, and the NVR is dumping off stuff that it doesn't need. So actually we can use some intelligence to say, can you record me 15 seconds before the action happened and 2-3 minutes afterwards? The camera, if it's just being recorded to this, can record from the point that action happened to a little bit of period afterwards. The NVR is going to allow us to retrieve information before. Why is that useful? Well, maybe we want to see what triggered the motion. And that is probably a useful extra piece of information. So if we're just using motion detection, then we want to think about what are we facing, what are we looking at, and how often does it happen? If we're looking down our driveway, does a car or the delivery driver appear on our driveway just once or twice a day? And therefore we're only going to have small pieces of information. So if we're recording on a camera, I would probably suggest you're going to be maybe putting about 128 gig SD card in there. That's probably going to be good on motion detection only. It's probably going to store you maybe even a month of data on one camera, all right, depending on the quality and how much movement's happening, and then it would overwrite itself. If it's pointing at something that's regularly recording, then maybe that'll only last you a few days, again, depending on the quality, and then it will overwrite it. But ask yourself, what do I need the footage for? Do I need to go back many days, or is this something that's happening right now? If it's something that's happening right now, then a small amount of storage really isn't going to be a problem. If I want to go back a lot of days in history, then you really want to consider an NVR. So then we think about, with our NVR, what type of storage or how much storage do you need? We recommend using a Western Digital purple drive. We'll show you these fitted in a minute. This is the 3.5 inch, just happens to be a 1 terabyte. Probably with 4 cameras, maybe 2 terabytes is probably going to be useful for a good month of storage of information based on an average amount of movement and detection during a day. And then you can obviously set it to rewrite itself if you want to. The more hard drive space you have, the longer you're going to be able to keep it for. Maybe with 8 cameras running, maybe 4 or 8 terabytes is going to push you, probably into 2 or 3 months. I've got 15 cameras running just on motion. And if I've got an 8 terabyte hard drive there, I can probably get 3/4 of a year of data stored just on 8 terabytes. Why? Because some of those cameras are pointing to areas where motion only happens a few times a day, and I'm only interested in 2 or 3 minutes of segment of time, so it can store for quite a long period of time. So you do want to think about how much storage do I want. Many people will go, if you're going to have like this, which is a 16-channel NVR, maybe people are going to start to go for about 8 terabytes as a starting point, because with 16 cameras, that does give you a good bit of longevity. So we've made a choice of whether we're going to be doing onboard storage for the camera or we're going to put a hard drive in an NVR. So let's have a look at this camera. This is a C540V. We've just taken the cap off the side of it here. Each camera has that option. We've just got our small micro SD, 128 gig, and we can now just put that, let me just see if I can show you that. We can now just push that into the slot, all right, and hopefully it will click into place if I put this the right way round. There we go, it's clicked in. We've now got 128 gig of onboard storage now set up on here. So we would now be able to put that camera outside, adopt it to the app, which we'll maybe cover in a few moments, all right? And from that point onwards, we'd be able to draw back any recordings that were on the device. Slightly more involved if it's the NVR. You will have removed the screws, one on each side and then the 2 at the back here, which will just allow you to open the NVR up like this. Once the NVRs are open, you'll actually see, hopefully you can see this, there's actually a SATA connection on this side, which will allow us to put our hard drive in. So we can now just push our hard drive into that slot, and that's clipped in place. You'll get 4 screws in the pack, which you can mount, are used to screw into the base of this drive. All right, and now we can just put our case back on here. So hopefully I can just do this here. I'm just going to clip this case. Always seem to get the pieces of metal the wrong way around, but it is super easy. It's not something to be nervous about. We can easily now put our screws back in the top and side, and our hard drive is now mounted in there, and we are ready to record. So those are the 2 options now. We've put storage into either our NVR or our camera, and we're now ready to think about what we're doing next. Now, obviously, I've not covered what cameras to choose, which we'll have a look at in a moment. Just wanted to show you the 2 options that we could do with storage at this stage. So we've chosen whether we're going to do storage on our cameras or storage on an NVR. We've put in our hard drive in our NVR, and maybe we've already got a camera, all right, and we've already put that in there. Now we've got to decide on how do we want to play back this information. If we're just doing storage on the camera, like we talked about on this camera here, we'll have a look at some options of cameras in a moment, then it's really simple. We just need to go and download the TP-Link Vigi app. There is a barcode on the top of each of these devices. All you need to do is get power to this. So you're either going to be plugging this into mains or PoE, which we can talk about as well in a moment. Camera comes online as long as it can see the internet. Then you can scan the barcode and the device will appear in your app on your smartphone, or you can download the TP-Link Vigi software for your computer, I think Mac and Windows. All right, and again, do the same process. You can tie it to a username and password that you create in your Vigi TP-Link account as well, and then add the cameras to that. So that allows you to have all the features and functions on the camera itself. Or again, like we said, we've got these 3 options. So that's on the camera. Then we move to an NVR, which sort of is a hybrid of all of those, really. The camera will store all of its information on the NVR, and you will then contact the NVR using your app. So again, we can have either the software running on our computer or on our smartphone. We can scan our barcode that's on the back of the unit here and add it to our TP-Link account. And now we've got the options to remotely log on to our NVR. As long as it's got internet access, we can access it from wherever we are, and it will work on connections like Starlink with no problems at all. And we can then view the recordings that the NVR has made and see all the different cameras. If we use the Windows app, the computer app, then again, we can make config and changes as well. So we can use the app to make our changes and config as well as viewing the data. Now there is an additional option here with TP-Link NVR, and that is that this is, if you like, a small mini computer, and we get on the back here audio and a VGA connection and a HDMI, and on the front 2 USB. So what we can actually use this, we can plug this directly into a monitor. So if we plug this directly into a monitor, then we can have a number of screens displayed directly for us to be able to view. So we could have 4 or 5 cameras already displayed onto a screen that we put on a wall or on a desk, and maybe we put this in an office or a shop environment, and we can see those happening in real time. So we have 3 ways now of looking back at the data. We've got a smartphone app, which will work just with the standalone phones and with the NVR. We've got an application we can install on our computer, which again, connected to our TP-Link account, will allow us to view the cameras and make config changes. Or we can plug in the NVR directly, and actually you can do all the config and everything as if it was a mini computer. So plug in a keyboard and mouse to the front here, plug in your monitor to the back, and we've got a computer that you can access directly. Connect it to the screen, and we can see all the cameras there in real time. Okay, so we've got to all the basics, the core of what decisions we're going to make of how we're going to record it, how we're going to access it and set it up. Now we're going to get onto the cameras. So there are choices of the ways to power these. So let's talk about that first. The most common thing is called PoE, Power over Ethernet. That is the ability to take a mains power in, so it needs to be plugged into a power socket, add it into a little injector, it's called a little square box, and out of the one side comes a connection called PoE, and on the other side, LAN connection. Your LAN connection is connected directly into your network switch or your router that you currently have, so it has internet. And now we've got power coming in and your data coming in, and on the other side, that PoE port is going to mix those two together. And now that cable can be up to 100 meters long before it plugs in to the device. So for instance, this camera can be 12 volt powered because it's got a 12 volt connector on there if you bought the 12 volt power pack. So it could be directly connected to power, or down this Ethernet cable, it can receive PoE power. So this could be up to 100 meters away from either a PoE switch, something like this TP-Link Armada switch that can have multiple ports, and it can be powering cameras, wireless access points, everything along like that. Or you could have bought, this is the PoE version of this, which will have a small switch built into here. And again, the power would be driven directly from your NVR. Those are the key ways. You can use a separate injector, but you'll probably, in your instance, because you have multiple cameras, use either a switch or a PoE version of your NVR. So you just got to choose how you're going to power this. If you've got a wireless camera like this one here, this TP-Link here, then you probably will power this by 12 volts, by mains power, because you've got this out on the shed or somewhere else, and you've just got wireless there. You've not been able to run an Ethernet cable. So in that instance, you're just going to use the 12 volt in. And for a lot of the wireless TP-Link cameras, you actually get a power pack in the pack as well to make it easy to power. So you probably just want to think about now, how are you going to connect your cameras? Are you going to run a cable out to them? A cable is always going to be better, an Ethernet cable. It's going to last longer. It's going to give you better data quality. Or do you need to have these wireless? If they're wireless, make sure we've got ones with good antenna and you've got a good wireless outside coverage so that you're going to get a good connection. Because remember, if the wireless is rubbish, your video reception and transmission is going to be rubbish. So if this can't get a good speed, it's not going to be able to run at a good speed. So that's your choice really. I would suggest if you're going to Ethernet cable them, then get the PoE version of the NVR. That's going to be the best. Or get a TP-Link or get a PoE switch that will connect to your router and allow you to connect up your TP-Link NVR as well. And that will then obviously power all of those, and you can have multiple devices connecting to it. So we've now chosen how we're going to power them. Are we going to use mains power or are we going to use PoE? So once we've chosen that, now we can choose which cameras we're going to get. So all of the cameras have different functionality, from set static lenses that will only point in one direction to full pan tilt zoom, PTZ. The ability for it to track objects, for you to angle it and change the way that the image looks. Most of the versatile ones, I'd say, go for as much flexibility as you can get. So this model here is a really good one. I think this is the C540. All right, this has two lenses for zoom. It's got a 3x optical zoom. It's a pan option, and it can tilt, so it can tilt this way. It has full detection of movement and tracking. So if a person was to pass in front of this, this will lock onto them and then follow them as they move through. This is PoE powered, so we'd be running this with an Ethernet cable because it's not wireless, but gives us another option of how this all works. So there are then full wireless cameras like this one here. I think this is the C540W. Probably might not have all the numbers. This is a pan and tilt. All right, it does. So again, it will object follow, but it won't zoom in, or it doesn't have the zoom function. All right, we've got great outside antennas. This comes with a mains power pack. So again, all we need is a power socket fairly close to this device and a good wireless connection, and we can record on the unit or on the NVR. We've then got plenty of other options, from static cameras that look just in one direction, to other ones like these, the same, that have got color night vision, so they've got LEDs at the front that light up the object as well. We've obviously, all of these have got infrared detection, So you've got infrared LEDs on the bottom here as well. So we do get night vision, but the idea that we can get color night vision by lighting up the object as well. So there are probably currently about 20 different cameras in the range. Do have a look through and see what suits you, having in mind, how am I going to power this? Am I going to connect this on an Ethernet cable, or is it going to be wireless? All right, and what do I need for my environment? Some of them are great that are static, that are what we call more bullet shaped. They have a knuckle joint, which allows you to bend and fit, because I maybe want to fit it up onto a gutter mount and then bend it downwards. Some of those might fit better. Maybe you're doing this inside and you want a small turret device that just fits on the ceiling and is sort of not so obvious. There is a great range of different cameras, and you can mix and match. You don't need to keep the same cameras across your whole portfolio on every location. You might have a wireless camera out of the garage. You might have a pan, tilt and zoom that is out in the garden space. You might have a fixed lens looking at the swimming pool because all you're worried about is what's going on in the swimming pool. You don't need it to track or move. You just need to be able to see what's happening in the swimming pool. So choose a camera that will fit with your scenario. Remember the limitation of how much data you're going to be able to store and how many cameras the actual NVR is going to have. And really that is probably the main core of setting up a TP-Link Vigi solution. So let's just go back through the basics. What was there? We talked about what TP-Link Vigi was. We talked about making a choice of how you want to store the data either on the camera or on an NVR. We then talked about what amount of storage do you need to be able to keep the recordings for the length of time that you want. Even showed you how to put the storage into the devices. We've talked about how you might review that information. We can view it on an app directly off the camera, or we can use the Windows or a Mac app directly on our computer for more configuration options, or we can access the NVR. Again, all of this can be done remotely, or we can even plug this NVR into a monitor with a keyboard and mouse and set it up so we can see the screens all of the time. We then talked about how we're going to power the devices. Are we going to choose PoE? Are we going to connect them to a PoE switch, or get an NVR that has PoE ports in it, i.e. we're going to Ethernet cable them, or are we going to use wireless cameras like this? And so we're going to just mains power them, but it's going to rely on a good wireless connection as well. So we had a good option and walk through all of those things. And then we talked about what cameras might you choose. Are they going to be have pan and tilt and zoom? Do you need them to be able to track the object, just static? Do you need to be able to see color at nighttime, or just the normal gray, slightly pink image that we get from infrared? So hopefully that's been a great simple walkthrough on what do I need to run TP-Link Vigi. We do have other videos on how to configure TP-Link Vigi as well, but hopefully this gives you an idea of what the ecosystem is and the components you need to make it run.